You step into the room and your body understands before your mind does. The air is stale, thick, as if fear has been exhaled here for years and never allowed to escape. No one stares openly, yet you feel eyes that do not blink, attention that does not drift. There are no threats, no raised voices, no visible danger, yet your chest tightens. Why, when no one attacks you, do you feel ashamed? This is where force becomes unnecessary. Control lives in presence. It does not shout or strike, it waits. It seeps into the way someone remains silent for too long, into the calm that refuses to explain itself. You begin to speak without being asked. You shift your weight. You justify yourself. Something in this room makes you smaller without ever touching you. You feel your identity thinning. You are no longer a whole person, only a reaction. A body anticipating judgment. Real power does not punish. It observes. It does not interrupt. It lets you unravel on your own. And as it waits, you reveal everything. You look at the one who remains calm. Their face is still, not because they are fearless, but because they have already been here. Panic was a luxury they lost long ago. That stillness is not confidence. It is memory. It is survival carved into the nervous system. As you struggle to regain control, a truth settles in quietly. This calm was not born from dominance, but from fear. From learning early that survival required silence. From understanding that to live, you must never react first. You did not learn control in moments of power. You learned it in rooms where nothing was stable. In homes where silence carried weight, where a wrong word shifted the air, where footsteps meant something was coming, and you had to know what before. It arrived. Here, observation became armor. You learned to read moods the way others read, whether a pause, a breath held too long, a door closing with intent. Mistakes were expensive, so you stopped making them publicly. You watched, you waited, you survived by staying ahead of what could hurt you. Fear did not disappear, it sharpened. It taught you discipline. You learned restraint, not because you were calm, but because reacting made things worse. Anger stayed inside your jaw. Sadness learned to hide behind your eyes. Every feeling was evaluated before it was allowed to exist. Control was not ambition. It was adaptation. A response to environments where safety was conditional. People later called this intelligence. They admired your composure. They mistook vigilance for wisdom. But you know the truth. This clarity was bought with exhaustion, with nights spent listening, with a nervous system trained to never relax. Once your body learns this language, it does not forget it. Even when the danger leaves, the vigilance remains. Your muscles stay ready. Your mind keeps scanning. Calm becomes a reflex, not a choice, and slowly, without ceremony, control stops being something you use. It becomes something you are, which is why stillness no longer feels peaceful. It feels necessary, a necessity once learned, only grows sharper with time. You learn to discipline the body first. Breath slows even when the chest wants to panic. Muscles remain loose while something inside tightens. Your face becomes neutral, unreadable, a surface that reflects nothing back. Reactions are delayed, filtered, inspected before they are allowed to exist. You do not explode. You contain from the outside. This looks like strength. Inside, It feels like pressure building behind sealed doors. Feelings rise and are crushed before they reach your mouth. Anger dissolves into stillness. Fear learns to disguise itself as calm. This is not peace. This is internal violence, performed quietly, daily, without witnesses. Over time, disconnection sets in. You stop knowing what you feel in real time. Emotions arrive late, distorted, or not at all. You become efficient, precise, hollow. Composure begins to erase parts of you, but slowly enough that no one notices, including you. Philosophers call this control. But control, when sustained too long, resembles decay more than mastery, and others feel it. They sense something off in your stillness. Your lack of reaction unsettles them. Humans expect resistance, emotion, friction. When you offer none, they grow nervous. They talk more. They reveal themselves. Your calm becomes a mirror they cannot read, and that terrifies them. You say nothing, and the room shifts. Your silence creates imbalance. Your restraint becomes pressure. This is when you understand the next lesson. Stillness does not just protect. You destabilizes everyone else. And once you see that effect, you realize silence is no longer absence. It is leverage. Silence stops being neutral. It gains weight. You notice how a pause stretches too long, how people begin to fidget inside it. You say less now, not because you have nothing to say, but because you've learned what quiet does to a room. Words retreat, absence advances, a pause becomes a trap. You hold eye contact just long enough for discomfort to surface. Not aggressive, not soft, just present. People start filling the space you refuse to occupy. They explain themselves. They justify details no one questioned. Their voices reveal urgency, then insecurity, then need. You don't interrogate them. You let the silence do it for you. Paranoia settles in quietly. They wonder what you know, what you've noticed, what you're waiting for. Silence forces projection. They imagine judgment where there is only observation, and that imagination does the damage for you. You learn that silence is never empty. It is active. It listens. It catalogues tone, posture, contradiction. It watches micro-movements, the way creditors once watched grass. Power, you realize, doesn't require confrontation. It requires patience. Let people speak long enough, and they expose the shape of their fears. History is built this way. Empires, interrogations, hierarchies, all sustained by who speaks first and who never needs to. Philosophers warned that power performs itself through restraint. You see it now, breathing in real time, and then the truth becomes unavoidable. The less you reveal, the more others surrender. They confess without being asked. They explain without being accused. They unravel while you remain still. You say nothing, and somehow you leave knowing everything. Your awareness sharpens until it never turns off. Faces become maps. You read the tightening around mouths, the delay before a smile, the way a voice lifts when it lies. Contradictions surface instantly. Tone betrays intention long before words do. Your mind tracks everything at once, layering meaning over meaning, never resting. This perception was born from danger, from needing to know what was coming before it arrived. Now it has become an advantage you cannot set down, but it is exhausting. You don't sit in conversations, you monitor them. Every interaction feels like a calculation. You notice who speaks when they're nervous, who avoids certain words, who leans forward when they want control. Nothing passes without being processed. Even laughter feels rehearsed, once you see what sits beneath it. Slowly, isolation sets in. Social spaces stop feeling safe. They become boards of strategy, not places of rest. While others lose themselves in the moment, you remain outside it. Observing. Connection requires blindness at least a little. You no longer have that luxury. Seeing too much ruins the illusion intimacy depends on. People sense the distance. They feel analyzed, exposed, unfinished in your presence. And you feel it too. The gap between understanding someone and feeling close to them. Control gives clarity, but clarity costs warmth. The more accurately you see others, the harder it becomes to belong among them. And then the most unsettling realization arrives. This separation isn't only from people, it's from yourself. Because when everything is observed, nothing is lived. And when control becomes constant, even your own emotions feel like strangers. No one truly knows you anymore, not because you hide deliberately, but because letting someone close feels irresponsible. Trust sounds like a gamble you can't afford. Rest feels dangerous, like lowering a guard that has kept you alive. Even in quiet moments, your mind stays alert, scanning for shifts that no longer exist. This is the hidden cost of dominance. From the outside, it looks like strength. From the inside, it feels like emptiness stretched thin. There is no relief in being composed all the time. Only maintenance. Vigilance replaces freedom. Calm becomes work. You are always on duty, even when nothing is happening. Grief settles in without drama. It doesn't scream. It drains. You mourn a version of yourself that could relax into uncertainty, that could be held without calculating the risk. But that person feels impracticable now, naive. You chose control because it kept you safe. Somewhere along the way, it became the only way you knew how to exist. The fantasy of power dissolves here. Control doesn't give you options. Sit narrow, Sem. Every decision is filtered, every impulse restrained. You don't feel protected anymore. You feel contained, like a room with no exits, only mirrors. And then something shifts. The vigilance turns inward. You begin watching yourself the way you watch others, correcting reactions, suppressing impulses, managing your own presence as if you were a threat that needed supervision. This is where the danger deepens, because when control stops guarding you from the world and starts policing you from within, collapse doesn't arrive loudly. It arrives quietly disguised as discipline. The collapse doesn't announce itself. Nothing breaks. Nothing explodes. It simply tightens. The traits that once kept you alive now press against your chest like a closed fist. Every interaction is measured. Every word weighed. You are never fully present because presence feels dangerous. To relax feels like exposure. To be open feels like death. There is no enemy anymore, yet your body behaves as if one is always near. Fear exists without a source. You prepare for impact that never comes. Vigilance has outlived its purpose, but it refuses to leave. Control no longer protects you from chaos. It manufactures it internally. You monitor yourself, endlessly tone posture, emotion correcting anything that might slip. Vulnerability becomes unthinkable. Not because it hurts, but because it dissolves the structure that holds you together. Without control, you fear there is nothing solid underneath. So you stay rigid, functional, hollow, living but not alive. The questions slow everything down now. They don't rush. They sit heavy in the silence you created. If control is stripped away, what remains? Are you calm or simply numb? Are you stern or only afraid of falling apart? Philosophers spoke of freedom as authenticity. But authenticity feels reckless when survival once depended on restraint. You realize something unbearable. Control gave you identity when you had none. It shaped you when chaos threatened to erase you. But now it has become the only mirror you recognize. And standing here, exhausted and contained, you understand the final cruelty of control. It saves you first, then it replaces you, and what remains must decideth to keep surviving finally risk living. Now you see it, not as a theory, not as a trait admired from a distance, but as something living and breathing inside others, or inside you. The quiet dominance, the restraint mistaken for wisdom, the calm that unnerves rooms without ever raising its voice. You recognize the patterns because you felt their weight. There is no redemption waiting here, no cleansing revelation, only responsibility. Control was never a virtue. It was a tool, a response to danger, a language learned to win. Safety was unreliable, and like any tool, it reflects the hand that uses it. It can protect. It can dominate. It can hollow you out while convincing the world you are composed. You were taught to see, to read between movements, tones, silences. That intelligence kept you alive. But survival is not the same as meaning, and seeing through people does not tell you who you are. It only gives you the power to decide what you'll do with what you see. This is where the choice lives, not in dominance, not in withdrawal, but in restraint, guided by awareness rather than fear. You can keep using control to stay untouched, unchallenged, alone. Or you can risk loosening your grip long enough to feel something real again. The world rewards those who never react. History praises those who remain unreadable. But there is a quieter reckoning that arrives when no one is watching. Because the most dangerous intelligence is not perception. It is the moment you realize you have it, and choose who you become next.